Welcome to the Tim Castle Show, where I sit down with courageous individuals doing inspirational things around the world. Whether it's AI, crypto, mindset, leadership, negotiation and sales, I've got you covered. I sit at that nexus of disruption and change. I'm loving every second of this. I really do believe this is the most abundant time that we've lived in. And if we harness what's going on correctly, we can build businesses that are going to transform our future and your lives. So come with me on this journey, meet the people. I pull back the curtain, I find out who they really are. I started off building this podcast for my sons as something they could look back on later in life and see the conversations that their dad had with people that he respected and admired, but most of all, get the lessons. And now I'm sharing those lessons with you and the reasons that people had done things, the ambition, the passion, and the hardship and their vulnerabilities. And I actually really enjoy it. This is one of the most special times as I get to sit down with people that I really would love to chat to and ask them the questions that are burning in my mind. If you are the same as me and you're pushing the limits and the edges of what you do, please like and subscribe to the show. It helps me tremendously to get new guests on the show and expand that reach so we can help more people together. Okay, welcome back to the Tim Castle Show, the show where we dig into the minds of visionary entrepreneurs shaping digital innovation and brand growth around the world. And today we are joined by such a person, a visionary at the intersection of e-commerce and artificial intelligence, Stephen Honight, founder of LM07. Stephen has built a cutting-edge agency that helps consumer brands win shelf space, not just online marketplaces like Amazon, but in the new world, in the frontier of AI-driven discovery access tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and more. So with a background in leadership, he's worked across brands and has a deep understanding of how LLMs work and the influence that it takes from a consumer to a purchase decision. So Stephen is uniquely positioned to unpack how companies can thrive where AI is the new search engine. I have really been looking forward to this conversation, Stephen. I am so excited to have you on the show. I know your background is deep in this stuff and you've been working with Fortune 500 consumer brands, founding LM07 and the evolution of AI native visibility strategies. This is something I'm super interested in. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tim. And what a great introduction. It was fantastic. I'm very excited to have the conversation today as well. And I think interesting how we got connected, right? I posted a note on LinkedIn. I'd read your book, The First Domino, just before I launched my business. And as a result of that, we got in touch and have had some very interesting conversations since.
Oh my goodness, haven't we just? It's just the best way when life works out like this. So on that point, we have had some interesting discussions. I want to jump straight in. So you were having a corporate life. I mean, you've worked for Unilever, Lego, Mars, some of the biggest brands in the world. And now you've transitioned to being a founder of your own startup, which I truly admire. What led you, and I'm curious here, like what led you to want to transition from those big brands, the corporate world? What motivated your shift to have those experiences and now go into AI search?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a couple of parts to it, because I guess on face value, a few people have said to me, like, why are you doing this? Like, you had a great job at Mars and you had a really good job previously with Lego and Unilever. Why would you not just continue to do those jobs at those great companies? And for sure, that was a path forward, right? But in my career history, I've worked at startups, I've had my own business in the past. There's something inside of me which wants to be out there building my own thing. And that's not a disservice to any of the big companies I've worked for. I've had a great time working for them, but there's something right in my core that really wanted, I really wanted to go out and do my own thing. And that is a great piece of motivation, but of course, you also need to know what to go out and build and what to go out and create.
Right.
And so for a long time, I didn't have any solid, I had ideas, but I didn't have anything that was like really concrete that I could get behind. And something changed for me. So about 18 months ago, I'd introduced ChatGPT to my daughter, and she's 11 at the time. And I said, hey, look, here's a cool new thing. You should play around with it. It can create poems for you. It can write plays, because she's quite into the creative space. It can also help you with your homework, but also make sure to check the answers, because it doesn't always tell you the right one. So I introduced her to it and she started playing around. And as I good parent, I'd check her iPad and make sure there's nothing nefarious on there. So I'd gone through her chat history on ChatGPT and seen this really interesting query. And so she had dictated into ChatGPT a query that went something like, hey, ChatGPT, I have brown hair. It's about shoulder length. I want it to be shinier. I want it to have a bit more volume. I don't have any allergies, and I'm 11 years old. Can you recommend a shampoo? And ChatGPT gave this long answer with lots of different product recommendations that linked out to different places. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, that is going to really change the way people search and find and discover products online, because that's so different from what I would do looking for a product. I'd take the word shampoo, maybe brown hair, but most likely just shampoo, drop it into Google and see what results came from that. And the results from that search are very different from the search results that were coming out of ChatGPT, for my daughter. So that was like a light bulb moment for me. And I thought, okay, I really do feel like this is going to change search and discovery, the way that consumers find products online. That's been everything that I've been doing for the last 20 years, helping brands sell online through channels like Amazon and other e-commerce retailers. So I felt like now's the moment to do something. And fast forward 18 months, as you said in the introduction, I've left Mars and I've now set up my own agency, LMO7, just to help brands with exactly that, helping them to work out how to play this new agentic space where consumers are increasingly asking platforms like ChatGPT what products to buy.
Oh my goodness. So you were literally doing this for the biggest brands in the world, like performance marketing, but for specifically the e-commerce. So you knew how to do it in the old world. Then your daughter had this penny drop moment in front of you, and you were like, oh my goodness, this is the future. And then you set up LMO7, so Language Model Optimization 7, because 7 is your proprietary 7-lever framework. Like, I mean,
Exactly.
cool name, very cool name. I guess you'd spotted the gap. If I just put my hat on where I'm like thinking about someone sitting in a corporate world now, they've spotted a gap. It's still pretty brave to go out and go, well, I'm going to go set up my agency. What specific challenges and opportunities did you observe in the market that led you to then go, well, now is the time? Like, there's the moment, the penny drop moments happen, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So the journey from that time 18 months ago when I started thinking about the idea to today went something like, okay, first of all, are we doing anything about this at Mars? Like, is anyone looking at this? Are any of the global teams getting involved in any of these projects? And at the very beginning of me asking those questions, the answer was not so much. Like, not much was being done about it. People were thinking about it, but not much action was being taken. And then during my time at Mars, actually, there was a whole lot of projects that then got spun up looking at this exact problem, working with different agencies, investigating our visibility, working with agencies to understand what changes we might make to our content to improve the visibility. And I got myself included in a whole bunch of those work streams. So I learned an awful lot during that time. I also got to understand what the proposition was from the agencies at the moment, the big agencies working with Mars, and how much they were charging to provide that service.
Aha.
And I thought, well, here's an interesting play, because there's a whole bunch of brands out there, smaller, challenger brands who won't have access to these big agencies, won't know the playbooks, will probably benefit more from gaining that visibility within these LLMs, because the big brands are playing more of a defensive game. They kind of have a lot of visibility and they want to maintain it, whereas the challenger brands don't have as much visibility and can gain more by improving their visibility in these platforms. So that was really the genesis of the idea. And then to kind of test it out, I started doing some talks on the topic. So I went to a couple of community events that I'm connected with or knew about, and I spoke about AI search and what was happening to really understand from that community, was it something people were interested in? Did they need some guidance on it? Was it helpful to them? And I got some good feedback. People said it was an interesting topic. They wanted to learn more. And for me, that was kind of like the litmus test or the acid test to say, okay, there's something here. People want to know more about this space. Okay, let's do it. Let's set up an agency and let's help them.
Amazing. So just so we're clear on the definitions then, is this the same? When we talk about AIO and GEO, like Generative Engine Optimization, are we talking about AI search?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different acronyms that are being thrown out at the moment, and I think people quite like the idea of being the founder of an acronym or creating an acronym. So there's tons of different ones, right, which talk about optimizing for different eventualities within these models. So I've heard a few different definitions, answer engine optimization being specifically making sure you're in an answer that's given, generative being more about, these long form answers that come out of the models. At the end of the day, it's, in my mind, AI search is a nice umbrella term for all of those things, which is, used to be searching on Google. Now you're searching maybe on Google and getting a Gemini answer or an AI overview, but maybe you're also going to ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude and getting an answer there instead. So I would use the term AI search as kind of an umbrella term for all of those different things that you might be doing to improve your visibility within those models. And then I think there's maybe sort of a follow-on question as well about this agentic point. Like, what does that mean?
Agentic commerce or agentic
e-commerce? What do we mean when we talk about agentic commerce or agentic e-commerce? Exactly. So I think, in my mind, agentic commerce is any version of commerce where an agent has been involved in that process in the consumer experience. So for sure, there's tons of things going on at the moment in retail where there are agents working in the background, right? But consumers don't actually have an interface with an agent. But when a consumer does have an interface with an agent through that purchase journey, that to me would be a version of agentic commerce or agentic e-commerce. And I think the sort of fully developed version of that, would be you go to ChatGPT, you ask it a question about a product, it recommends something, that brand, company, or whoever sells the product has enabled their product to be viable inside of ChatGPT. So the product card appears inside ChatGPT. You can see it. You've set up your credit card details with ChatGPT already, and you press purchase, and you actually make that purchase. Not necessarily talking about fully automated purchases where you've almost permissioned the model to buy for you, but anything where the transaction is happening through the agentic flow and the way the consumers are buying is touched by or influenced by or enabled by an agent, essentially.
There's like AI mediated shopping then, that in whatever framework now, and obviously as this evolves, you will have more agent to agent transaction. All of this stuff's going to come.
100%. Yeah.
But so if I'm a brand and I'm like, right, I get it, Stephen, you've sold me. I'm now signed up to LMO7. Like, I know I need to optimize for AI systems and not just do SEO. But how long am I going to take on this journey to see some results if we start today?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing I'd say is, I think with any sort of go-to-market plan you have as a consumer brand, there's really three elements to it. And you could overcomplicate it and say there are a lot more, but they have the operational part. Can you actually physically get the products to where they need to be shipped and sold? And is all the data flowing back and forth to enable that to happen? The content piece, which is really about that visibility. Are you found in the places you should be? And when you are found, are you then able to convert that consumer to make a purchase? And then obviously you run ads on top, which is going to enhance the traffic flow through to your products. I think in the generative AI search space, it's kind of the same. You've got this ops play, which is connecting through MCPs directly to the models if you want to do that and having the right data flow. Then got this content piece, which is all about visibility within the models, so having the right content to make sure you're surfaced when people ask those questions. And then we've seen recently, ChatGPT saying they are going to run ads in their platform, and then interestingly, Claude coming and saying we're absolutely not going to do that in ours. So differentiating themselves, but there will be ads plays as well. And with LMO7, I think the simplest thing at the moment to do is this content optimization play. So in that agentic stack, is the content that you've got on your website speaking to the kind of questions people are asking to the models? It's really simple if you think about it, because in the old world, you'd put a keyword into Google and it would return the results of the things that you wanted to see that are connected to it. And in the new world, people are putting a query into ChatGPT and it's returning an answer to that query. So are you answering that query on your website with the content you've got? So it's really that simple. But before you can do that, you actually just need to understand what your current visibility is. So are you appearing against those queries in your category right now? And once you have that baseline, you can start to optimize against it and be able to improve your visibility versus what it was previously.
This might be a really stupid question, but I'd love to ask it. If I'm logged into ChatGPT already, and then I start searching for my brand within ChatGPT, isn't ChatGPT going to be like my friend and go, yeah, you're amazing. Like, yeah, my company is turning over $2 million a year and da, 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 da. And yeah, you're number one in the world. How do I know it's legit and not just ChatGPT being my friend? And do I have to log out? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And actually, I don't know if you watched that, the advert from Anthropic, which kind of like pokes some fun at this, like how do you want to call it? The idea that the AI is almost too much of your friend and like giving you too much of a positive response. And I think what I would say to that is, in the same way that Googling things became a skill about 20 years ago, right? Or whenever it was. I remember like you sort of had to learn this behavior or process of, have a problem, let me synthesize that or like condense it into a keyword, let me drop that into Google, let me find the kind of results that are going to help, let me go to those results and get an answer. I think there's a skill to asking questions to ChatGPT as well, right? And so that partly is the framing that you put into it, and partly is the interrogation that you give the model after it gives you the answer. Because for sure, like maybe you shouldn't take everything that it says on face value. Now, you raised a really important point about being logged in versus not logged in, or the history that the models might have about you that might influence the answer. And so this is actually what makes it quite complicated to understand your visibility within a model. Because for sure, if you go and ask a question to ChatGPT, and I ask a question to ChatGPT, we're going to get very different answers. Partly because of the probabilistic nature of the models, so they're not deterministic, they're going to give a different answer every time. And partly because of the history it knows about you, which is going to be influencing the answer as well. And so if you really want to understand what your visibility looks like in the models, you have to run thousands and thousands and thousands of prompts into these models in different ways to really truly understand what your visibility picture looks like. And at best, it's still going to be, let's say, directional, right? It's not absolute in the same way that you might say, well, on Google, we're number one for this keyword, and we have been for the last 10 years, and we've never moved away from that position. You can be a lot more absolute about that position. Whereas on the models, it's more about percentages. So, how much of the time are we in the top 3 answers would be a question that you'd want to ask yourself as a brand.
And so if we extrapolate that out, if I'm putting my kind of guerrilla marketing hat on, is there a way to game the system? If I feed links to my chat GPT, am I updating its reference points, or what is it scraping outside in the ecosystem that, as well as my website, let's just say we've formatted that with a structure that's going to be more likely to be picked up and answer the questions that someone was searching, where else do I need to be seen? And what can I do to kind of accelerate this?
Yeah, that's another really great question. And there's something really interesting about when you ask ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude a question and it gives you the answer. At the end of that answer, it'll tell you what sources it's used, right? So it'll tell you, hey, we got this information from these different places. And that could be your website, that could be Wikipedia, it could be Reddit. We know those are big sources for some of the models. Those citation levels are fluctuating as well, though. So it's not always true that everything's coming from Reddit or everything's coming from Wikipedia, and it's very different by category as well. But with the tools that are out there in the marketplace today, what you're able to do, again, by sending lots of prompts to these models and recording the answers, is see, okay, on average, what's the position and what's influencing that position? What are the top citation sources where this information is coming from? And you're absolutely right. You can go influence those sources, potentially, not necessarily, but potentially you can go influence those sources, create content on those sources, and that will influence the answers. Now, I would say a little bit of a warning here, which is, if you remember early days of Google, there would be black hat techniques, for want of a better word, where you were sort of gaming the system with backlinks, and that was gaining you an advantage within the search results. But over time, Google came wise to that, and actually it started to work against you. And so it would actually give you less visibility if you did those things that weren't seen as helpful for the consumer. And I think the same will be true in the models as well. So whilst there might be opportunities right now to sort of game the system and get more visibility than you should for the content you've got out there at the moment, probably not a good idea. I think over time I'll start to work against you. And an example of that would be if you used AI to create an infinite amount of content about your brand, service, product that you pushed out into the internet to try and game and get extra visibility. That might work in the short term, but it probably will work against you down the line. So I think it's about doing it in the right way, where you're making sure that the important things about your brand or your service are out in the right places to be discovered by these models. So it's not about doing anything manipulative. It's more about making sure that the right information is in the right places so the models can give the right answer. And to be honest, there's loads of brands who aren't doing that well right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a great point that you made that there's a small window but it's very, very highly likely to backfire. And as soon as it does, you've actually gained less ground than if you just started doing it the right way with an agency like yours from the beginning. So what metrics are you looking for in terms of success? Like how would I know, or how, if I'm a brand and I'm a $5 million a year D2C brand, like how would I know, how would I assess that my AI performance is getting better or AI search is getting better in these environments? Like what would I be looking for?
For sure. And I guess here it's really interesting to say, the background, what I've been doing for the last 8 years before I started LMO7 was commercial roles at these brands, right? So delivering sales value, incremental sales value to those businesses. And this opportunity now is absolutely about the same thing, right? So number one question is, are we driving more incremental sales for the brand, right? And there are a number of different ways that you can figure that out. One of the ways you can actually look at it quite simply is, if you have a Shopify store and you're talking about your own D2C proposition, then you can track AI traffic sources in your GA4 dashboard, or you can build a special dashboard and you can actually see what traffic is coming directly from these models and say, okay, well, that's incremental traffic coming to our website. It generally converts higher than organic traffic because it's kind of pre-qualified with maybe a Q&A that the consumer's been doing inside the models. And then we can actually attribute sales directly to that channel. Now, it's still a relatively small channel, but I saw some really interesting research the other day from SimilarWeb where they looked at all the different touch points across the web. And actually, the influence these models have is about 5x the direct sourcing of traffic to your website. So, for example, if 100 visits came to your website from ChatGPT, the influence is probably more like 500. So where people have actually searched inside of ChatGPT, had a conversation, and then maybe taken your brand name and put it into Google and found you that way, and you've lost that direct link and tracking. So I think there's a way to directly monitor and check how much traffic is coming from these models. And then there's a extrapolation of that, say, well, how much influence do we think is overall happening on our sales from the people who are asking these questions inside the models? But then bring it
Hang on. So you're saying that within a model, brand recall or brand purchase intent, all of these things is like 500% better if it's from within
So
in those environments. Like what compared to Google, like they go across to Google. Like what's the point here?
yeah, sorry. So to make that super clear, let's take it in two parts. One is traffic that comes from AI, directly from AI sources, tends to convert 2 to 3 times higher than organic traffic, right? So as an example, if we had a 5% conversion rate on organic traffic, if it's coming from ChatGPT, it probably converts about 10 to 15%, right? And I've seen that in actual real data with brands I've worked with. I've also seen it on third-party research that's done as well. And the hypothesis there is, people are pre-qualifying themselves inside the model by asking the questions. You also know, because the models are our friend, they propose the brands and the services in a way that, it's framed nicely. So you kind of think, this is the thing, I do really want to buy this thing. So you click through and then you purchase at a high rate. So that's one thing that's happening. A second one is, SimilarWeb's research and analysis, what they concluded was that the influence from these models is 5x bigger than the directly trackable influence, right? So of the, let's call it 100 visits that came directly from ChatGPT, another 500 visits came indirectly from ChatGPT. You just can't track them directly. Right, so people were in the models asking the questions, didn't click on a link inside the model because actually it's not a behavior that we're sort of that used to at the moment. And instead just said, it's recommended me the book, The First Domino. Cool, I'm gonna go on Amazon and search for it there and buy it there, right? And at that point in time, you miss that connection point. You don't understand whether or not someone came from an AI search conversation or not. So their guidance was, think about it as like a 5x influence.
Mad, right? Okay, so it's the future. It's already here. It's happening. I'm loving this.
I think so. And in my mind, the way I'm thinking about it is, I think it's going to be, it will be, and is already starting to be quite disruptive. But it's a bit like when e-commerce came along and disrupted in-store purchases, right? So e-commerce was a new channel. Everyone's like, everyone's going to be buying online, and a whole bunch of people do buy online. A big chunk of people buy online. It's a big part of revenue for most retailers and brands now. But people still buy in store, right? So the physical store hasn't gone away. And if anything, it's made the physical store have to get better to make people want to go into the physical store. And I kind of see this agentic commerce doing the same thing to e-commerce, which is some people will want to buy agentically, and that will happen for sure. Not everybody is going to switch. So it's not going to completely get rid of classical e-commerce. It's just going to be disruptive to it and see some people shift and move over. And then regular classical e-commerce probably has to raise their game a little bit to get people to still want to buy from them in the regular platform on a website. And it should, in my mind, just sit quite neatly alongside it, rather than completely upend it or change the business models. So that's what I expect to happen.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's kind of like marrying the humanness of society, and some people feel more comfortable in ChatGPT or Claude, Perplexity. Some people feel totally comfortable on Lazada and just continuing what they've already done.
And what's true is, we're quite sticky humans. Like we don't change too quickly. So we as humans are going to slow the pace of adoption down. The technology might be there, but the actual changing behavior of humans is the thing that's going to probably be the rate limiter for it, for want of a better word. And then it's also true that, a bit like what we see with install purchases, is through different generations, there's different propensities to use and to trust these models, right? So for sure, the older you are, the less you use AI and the less trust you have in AI. And the younger you are, the more you use, the more you're using AI and the more trust you have with it. So probably what happens, like with e-commerce, is the younger cohort is the one that starts to use it first and uses it the most, and the older cohort are the people who are maybe the laggards or use it less. And as a result, that means, again, not everything's going to switch overnight.
But when we think about it, then a lot of the younger people are in media and marketing and advertising, right? And so if they're the younger mindsets, like won't like how do you see this in the role of advertising, in the role of like is AI search going to become a dominant channel for digital advertising?
It could it could do. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see how the business model evolves, right? Because as we mentioned earlier, ChatGPT are bringing in advertising into their platform. Those adverts are going to be at the bottom of the answers, so they're not going to be inside the answers. They're going to make sure the answer is clean, quote unquote, and then the advert's going to come underneath it. And at the moment, they're charging that as a display format, rather than a pay-per-click format. Other models have said they're not going to put any advertising in. I am almost certain on Amazon, Rufus will be monetized in some way, or in fact, it already is being monetized, because you can buy sponsored prompts in Rufus, but it will be even more, let's say, overtly advertised by Amazon over time, I expect. So yeah, I do think it becomes an important component of the funnel. I do feel like you could think about this like, is it a brand play or is it a performance play? And I think high level, you might think of it as a brand play, which is, what's my visibility like in these models? Do I have like the right share of voice or share of space within these models? Like, is the model saying the right thing about my brand? And you could get quite concerned about that as a brand marketer. But I do think for me, the agentic play, it's performance. So it's like it's paying for driving revenue. And we saw this evolution over the last 20 years, first of the Google ecosystem or the Alphabet ecosystem for Google evolve. Then came social, and Meta became a big play in advertising, right? Then there was this explosion of retail media, and certainly across Europe and America, that was Amazon advertising became a huge component in the advertising stack. And I think what we might now see over the next 5 years is, agentic, whether it's OpenAI or whoever else is monetizing that space, we'll see a big amount of revenue shift there. Now, it will only shift there if the ROI is there, right? So if these ads convert well, then a whole bunch of cash will shift to those platforms. And my guess is, because it knows a lot about you, because it has your history, because it synthesizes a lot of information, those ads in theory should be highly targeted. And if we know ads are highly targeted, they should have high ROI. If there's a high ROI, then a whole load of money should flow there. So that's my kind of hypothesis as to, I think this will become an important part of the advertising stack in the future.
Really interesting. And the coolest part about what you're doing, I think, is the fact that it takes a lot of trust, right? And so you're in ChatGPT or you're in Claude and you're talking to it. When it gives you the top answers and your brand's in that, I think as a human, I'm going, okay, that's a really solid reference point. If there's an ad down there, I'm not trying to diss ads. I'm just saying it's a sponsored thing that I'm like, okay, I know why it's there and I get it, but I really need trust here. And if I'm in the 1, 2, 3 slot of those responses, which is the piece that you're doing, that is, You can almost see how brands that jump on this now are gaining real estate that will be much harder to gain in 2 years' time. If we go back 20 years, it's like being able to just do Meta and Google when you could just run a campaign and get tons of followers and get tons of SEO was much more
For sure,
possible.
for sure, and it's absolutely true in all of those different evolutions. Over time, it's become hard. It's always become harder, right? Like
Right.
at the
More
beginning of
money
the
to spend to get the same result. Yep.
exactly, it always becomes ends up being more of a pay to play in the future. And at the beginning, it's quite easy to do things organically, and then it becomes increasingly harder to do things organically, and then you have to start paying for it. And I think we're in that same space right now, which is now's the time to do things organically. And if your brand, leaning into that now will be an advantage today, but also is going to be a big advantage tomorrow, and probably means that you spend less in the future. So it seems like a good investment, I think. And it's interesting, quite a few brands I speak to are on board with that idea, right? I don't think it's a difficult sell, should we say, for people to understand that. And then it really becomes a question of, okay, well, if we invest that money now, like when's the ROI? And is now the right time to start, or is it in 3 months' time, or is it in 6 months' time, or is it in 9 months' time? I think the window is like the next 18 months. You need to be doing, if you don't do something about it in the next 18 months, you're probably going to miss out, and it's going to become very painful and expensive for you to try and get that visibility back in the future.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. It becomes more of a risk if you delay. And there's this whole early adopter, late adopter. Well, in 18 months, you're in the late adopter category. Like we're already done the early adopter, and now it's like peak time to start thinking about your AI search strategy and building out your visibility.
Absolutely. I mean, that would 100% be the FOMO play for my sales pitch.
But this is it. This is what got me so excited to talk to you. Like, obviously, you read my book, you reached out, you were like, "Ah, great book, cool." Usually, that's it. But then I'm like, "What's this guy doing?" Oh, my goodness, that he's on the money there. That is exactly what brands need to be thinking about. And those that are savvy, not it's the ones that are innovative, but at the same time understand that the change is happening whether they like it or not. And yes, you might have done traditional advertising, you're doing TV and print, still all good, but you have a massive opportunity here right now. And those that you're really speaking to are probably those ones that are like 1 million to 50 million in the e-commerce space. They're already doing it. And now they get another tool to play with where they can go up the rankings. And it's almost like defensible future proofing that is very possible. Like it's not like a risk. I can't see the risk here. I can see the risk in not doing it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe what I kind of hear back or sense from some brands is you're trying to decide, is this a new channel which is really just like, I don't know, an extension of what they were doing before? So a good way I would describe that would maybe be, selling through Instagram or TikTok, both really good channels, really important channels to sell in and sell on. And some brands are like, cool, we'll add that on. And some brands are like, nah, it's not our space. We're not going to do it. You kind of sort of not take it or leave it. That'd be the wrong way to describe it. But like, it's like an add-on. Whereas I feel like this agentic play is going to become much more structural, and you will need to be involved in it in the future because a lot more volume will go through there. So rather than it being like incidental add-on, good channel for you to grow through as a small brand, it's going to become like one of the big stacks, like physical retail, e-com, and then you'll have agentic. And so you'll need to do all three of those if you want to succeed in the future.
Yeah, it makes sense. This is really, really exciting. I want to spend a little bit of time because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the show. And I think what
Sure.
they will be getting already is one, you're a cool cat, you're calm, collected, you're here, you're running a business, you've come out and you've done something that's very exciting in a cool space. Like, can you talk to us a little bit about how you organize your day and like what does a day in the life of Stephen look like so that you can get up and execute? Because you've covered a lot of ground pretty quickly in a new visionary area. And it just looks to me like you're having an amazing time doing it. So I'd love to tap into that knowledge and wisdom that you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because in your book, uh, the first domino, and on your website, First Domino, there's some toolkits. And one of those toolkits is like the weekly framework, right? So like how you're setting your week up and what you're going to do. And it talks about, well, there's the checklist for, when you're going to go to bed, when are you going to
Oh yeah,
wake
of
up,
course. Yeah, yeah.
when are you going to get your exercise in, when are you going to do all these other components. And actually, for me, that's super important, having like a really, let's say, structured schedule, right, throughout the day. So looking like trying to wake up at the same time every day, trying to go to bed at the same time every evening, trying to ensure that I get my fitness in, which is really important to me. And that gives me the energy and the, let's say, the almost the productivity to go out and then do all the things that I need to do. And one of the things that I'm actually really enjoying about setting up my own business and being an entrepreneur is, really controlling my schedule and being very, let's say, very planned in how and when I'm using my time and energy. Because in the corporate world, there's a whole bunch of meetings, there's a whole rhythm, there's a whole way of doing things, which is a little bit outside of your control because it's already been set up and you have to plug into it, right? Whereas I get the opportunity now with LMO7 to create that from scratch. So that looks like pretty heavy zoning throughout my week in terms of when and how I'm going to do things, specific days when I plan to travel, blockouts in nearly every hour of my calendar, but actually even down to like 15-minute or 30-minute blocks to be like, this is the moment when I'm doing these topics and these things. So heavily planned, definitely includes a lot of fixed timings on starts and ends, and always includes doing some exercise during the day as well, which I know we were talking about before the show as well, how important those things are.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's really exciting about what you just said, and I love that you said this, is that to the outsider, that can seem really rigid and really tying you down. Yet that is the exact kind of schedule that gives you the freedom to feel completely liberated. Like that, it's a weird dichotomy there that you're like, you've done it down to the 15 minutes, but you know exactly what you're doing when, and there's the consistency around it means that you can execute all these things and get so much done whilst feeling like it was a breeze.
100%. I completely agree with you. It's like it feels like, oh, it seems like it's the wrong way around, right?
Right.
Playing to that level, but it's actually it completely does give you the freedom. And then one thing that I do love doing is well, there's two things. One is I have a planner board, a Trello planner board, where I'm kind of like rolling through the priorities for the day, so moving things up, down, and I look at it frequently and I reprioritize quite often because for sure sometimes things take a bit longer than I had anticipated. Things come in which I hadn't expected, which are good, that I want to take advantage of. So I do need a bit of flexibility within the framework that I've built. But the thing that's great about planning your time so specifically is, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur about this, is like, in some ways it gives you the dopamine hit of like, oh, I need to do this in the next 15 minutes. Like I have to do it in the next 15 minutes because after that I don't have the time for it until tomorrow. So like I have to fit it in now. So I'm going to be 100% focused on doing this one thing in this next 15 minutes that I need to do, and then it's done. And if I didn't have that structure, I'd be like, nah, I just do it later. Like I'll pick it up tomorrow. And then, that list of 3 things goes to 6 to 9 to 12 to 24. And then before you know it, you're just looking down this huge long to-do list and you haven't really achieved anything. So yeah, I love the framework that you have on the website. If people haven't seen it or checked it out, like it's a really great start point for people who don't use one like that at the moment. And then over time, I feel like you just build from it and evolve it into something that works for you.
I'm smiling so much right now because I think there's just a lot of misconception of what being an entrepreneur is really like, and then being a successful entrepreneur that can get things done, that feels like you've been fulfilled. Like, what would be one thing that you think back and you're like, well, I really don't miss that about the corporate world? What's been better about this transition and this life that you're living now that has surprised you? Like, not like I don't want to do company meetings or all hands and all that kind of stuff. Like, what's
Sure.
been the most surprising thing that you're like, yeah, I really don't miss that, but I didn't notice until I then got my freedom.
That is interesting. So, what did I not miss? I mean, there's a lot of things I do miss about the corporate world, right? Let's start there first, and then
Yeah,
I'll
how
come on
so?
to
How so? What do you
so,
miss?
so I think there's, for want of a better word, like the camaraderie and the connection and the community that gets is instantly created by being part of a larger company, and obviously that's something now I need to build and create in my new organization. And starting out, it's just me, and then maybe a handful of people who are working on contract
So
to support me, and it's not the same.
How
Yeah.
do you solve that then? What things are you doing to fulfill that bucket?
So interestingly, a couple of people locally I know who are also similar, in a similar position, also entrepreneurs, maybe a bit further along in the journey, trying to make good connections with those people and trying to meet with them regularly to have that like social cohesion and someone to talk about the similar challenges and frustrations that we might have. Because we all know in the corporate world, you might get together in a team and say, oh, this doesn't really work for us, vent a little bit about something, come together on how you're going to solve it, and then go away and you can have some agency around that. And I think same thing with your own company, like being around other people who are doing the same thing as you is helpful for that same reason. Like, oh, I can't really figure out how to get this done, or that thing's really annoying me. How do I solve that? Okay, cool. That's the right way to do it. I have agency around this topic. I'll go away and do it. In terms of what I kind of like have surprised me about coming into the world of entrepreneurship, I think it's so before I actually sort of accidentally went into corporate, Tim. So like I had my own business previously, so back in 2014, 15, 16, and then ended up getting into corporate in 2017, 18.
Was that
And
when you
so,
were with Lego?
yeah, so I actually started out, what happened is I had an e-commerce business, which was reasonably successful. We were importing and reselling brands, selling them to Amazon, selling on Amazon, selling direct to consumer as well. But that business kind of fizzled out. We couldn't continue the momentum on it for a couple of different reasons. And I decided I needed to go and earn some money in a different way. And so that started out with me doing a bit of consulting work, but then eventually led to me working for Unilever. So I did Unilever, then I went to Lego, and then Mars, and now back to this entrepreneurial space. And so actually I kind of knew what I was getting in for. Like I had been there before, and some of the basic stuff was like, I knew what to expect. So in that respect, at the moment, I wouldn't say anything has massively
So
surprised
what did you
me.
do differently then between startup one and startup two, or like entrepreneurship adventure one, and now?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's, I think as with most entrepreneur stories, it's not just like one or two things. It's been like a catalog of things that have been tried, tested, failed. So, I would say there's at least 5 or 6 attempts at trying to, make something work and make something happen. I think what's different this time around for me is I am really, what's the right way to describe it? I'm a real believer in the way this space is going to evolve and change. Like I
Yeah.
really truly believe it. And like I
Yeah.
have, as you can tell, maybe from the passion I've got for the space, and it's really drawing me towards it. Whereas I think in previous iterations of businesses I've tried to do, I'm like, hey, this is kind of a good idea. It feels like it could be a thing. Let me try and force it. Let me try and make it happen. Whereas this time around, I'm like, I just know this is the right thing to be doing. And something in the universe is drawing me towards it more powerfully than it has done before. So that's what's different this time around.
That's amazing. Like that is your intuition speaking to you. And that's the depth of experience that's come from all the work that you've done and all of those different attempts. And I totally get it when you can see something and you just know it's a very different like presence. It's a very different confidence that you have. And you can see it, right? Like I know you're going to do well. I know it. That's why I'm like, I've got to talk to this guy. And you can see it, right? There's a massive takeaway for everybody in this episode. Like the future of products is changing fast. The future of AI, it's not the future anymore. It's here and it's happening now. And it's all about visibility. And so,
I think
how would someone engage with LMO7 and yourself? And what would be the process to get involved if this is spoken to them and they're like, yeah, I have a brand and a product and it's direct to consumer or it's e-commerce, like this is something that I need to get on. What do they do next?
so. Try and make it really, really simple. Right. So first of all is a short call, just explaining what I know about the space, what's happening. A lot of the stuff that we've already covered in this podcast, right? So just to onboard people and make sure they're in the same mental headspace as I am about what we think is going to happen with the future of agentic commerce. So start there, and then very simply, I run free audits for brands. So I will check using a whole bunch of different tools what current visibility looks like in the models, and I'll do that over the course of a couple of weeks. Come back to the brand, show them the current visibility, and give them some ideas about some of the optimizations they can go away and do today. And then it's up to them. Do they want to pick that up and run with it themselves? Or do they want to engage with LMI7? And of course, then we can do that work for them and continue to work with them to optimize their visibility and drive more sales for them through the channel. So it's really simple and straightforward. First conversation, free audit, and then they get to decide what to do next.
Stephen, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I feel like I've got a glimpse into like something that's one of the most innovative conversations I've had. You are like a true visionary out there making things happen at the very cusp of change. And that's exciting. It just I can feel your passion and your energy. I think everyone should go out and follow you on LinkedIn. You drop some amazing posts that are like every time you post, I'm like, I've got to read. I'm not just liking and moving on. I'm reading all the things you put out because it's just sensational. Like this is happening in real time and you're at the center of it. And I really admire that. I really admire that totally. And you're inspiring a generation here, Stephen. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking us through how to do AI search properly and for really breaking it down into something that I think is simple and digestible that people can actually understand because that's another part of it. There's so much jargon, so much people trying to own acronyms. It's all there. This episode I can see is already going to change some lives and people are going to get on this and they're going to be thanking you in 5 years for taking the time out to do this right now. So yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to you.
Thanks, Tim. And yeah, as always, time will tell and give us all the answers. But I also want to say thanks to you as well for writing such a great book. It was a really good inspiration for me as I was starting out on my journey and then led to us having this conversation. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad it brought us together and I'm glad we could do this.